LeBron James, particularly once he got to Miami, or specifically when he got to South Beach, that's when everything really, really changed and elevated to another level. I mean, he was able to tune people out more because the level of vitriol that he was receiving in light of his transition from Cleveland to Miami really hit home. I mean, this is a guy that was born and raised in Akron, Ohio, just 30 minutes outside of Cleveland. And to see the love that they had for him, the big mural, "We are all witnesses," that was hanging up in Cleveland, every single day. And then to witness people burning his jersey, the tears that flowed, from the city, from people in the city, just the venom that was displayed in the aftermath of his departure. It was something that was surprising to him. He knew that people would be disappointed. He knew that people would be hurt. But the level of hatred that he experienced, I don't think he ever anticipated that it would escalate to that point. And in light of that reality, once he went to Miami and you saw the nation, because of quote unquote the decision, you saw just the fallout from that, the manner in which it was handled. People were looking at him. People were looking at him in an entirely different manner. And for the first time in his career, he was a pariah. He was hated. And when he went to the finals that following year, like he said, he had that attitude where he had a chip on his shoulder and he was playing basketball with a different mindset, wasn't necessarily having fun, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they lost in the NBA Finals to Dallas, the joy that people got from watching him lose that finals, very absolutely elevated and escalated by Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who was talking about there are no easy paths to a championship, as if he would know, and all of this other stuff. It really hit home. And so before he won the championship last year against Oklahoma City, the Game 6 performance against Boston, and ultimately Game 7, all of that stuff. I mean, we all thought they were done. And we all thought we would be writing his basketball epitaph, and it didn't come to pass. And it was because he locked in, zeroed in, tuned everybody out, started meditating a bit more, started reading, started focusing. And because of that, I think it contributes to everything that Gregg Popovich just said. He's a completely different individual than he was years ago.
I'm with you on this one. And as a point of reference for our viewers who might not know, Coach Popovich got to know a very young LeBron James at age 20. Remember this, Stephen A? On the Olympic team in 2004. Remember that ill-fated Olympic team starring Iverson and Marbury and Tim Duncan? But the young players didn't get to play much. For a guy you know very well, Larry Brown was the head coach. Popovich was an assistant coach. So I think Pop and LeBron bonded a little bit as extras on that team, as the assistant and a bench player. Remember, LeBron played in all 8 of those Olympic games, averaged 5.4 points per game. And Manu's Argentina team won the gold medal that year. So there is a point of reference here for Coach Popovich. But what surprised me, and this quote was uttered actually back last preseason, but Pop doesn't usually speak out about anybody on any other team, especially the star of the other team, unless it's just sort of vanilla quotes about, yeah, he's a great player. But Pop went inside LeBron's psyche, and Pop can really go inside a star's psyche if he so chooses, just the way he can tear apart a player's game and analyze it. And in this case, I agree 100%. LeBron finally, as we know, got the weight of the basketball world off his shoulders. But more important, he learned to tune everything out. He learned to go inside himself before big games through all of his new meditation techniques that we saw in the finals last year. But Stephen A., what I cannot forget is what you told me shortly after the first finals in Miami against Dallas. Remember what you told me? That after the Heat went up 2-1 in Dallas, LeBron went back to his hotel room. That's what a source told you. Remember that one? And wrote down a list of, these are the people I'm going to tell off when we close this series out. And they didn't close it out. As you well know, LeBron had his worst finals and one of probably the worst moments of his career subsequently. And I think it took that to turn him completely around and say, I don't need those people. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say on First Take. I don't care what they say on PTI. I don't care about any show. I care about what happens on this basketball court with my team. That's the guy we're seeing now, because the previous guy you talked about had very thin skin. He took to heart that tidal wave of criticism that hit him after his "I'm going to take my talents to South Beach" speech.
Yeah, you have a point, but I don't want to attribute it to just thin skin. The reality of the situation is that, and I'm not going to speak for you, I'm going to speak for myself. There are times where, dare I say, we can appear unfair. And you know, when I look at LeBron James, it's one thing to criticize his performance. This is how you performed. But in an effort to reach deeper, to try to become more in-depth, to try to gather a level of insight and what have you, when you're the man on top, you're sometimes the shrapnel of criticism that comes your way is unfair because it's tainted. It's tainted by people with agendas. Now, obviously, as a reporter, you have sources. You have people telling you stuff all the time. It's not like a plethora of information comes from LeBron himself any more than it comes from a Kobe or a Shaq back in the day or Isaiah Thomas or a Magic or anybody else. We tend to gravitate to people that we like the most, like the Julius Dr. J. Irvins and what have you, because he was so humble and everything like that, just like we do to Kevin Durant today. And as a result, what we find ourselves doing is hands-off, a relatively hands-off approach. I'd certainly never accuse you of that. But a lot of folks in the media, sometimes with the likable personalities, you sort of got a hands-off approach. But with somebody like LeBron, it wasn't that he wasn't likable. No. It's that because of his greatness and the celebration that came associated with his greatness, without him winning a championship, there were people in the game, present and former, who had a level of resentment towards him because they felt that he was getting something that was not yet deserved. And a lot of times they said stuff, and a lot of times they said stuff to other people that ultimately sifted out to us. And as a result of that happening, combined with what we saw on the court, we tried to surmise in our own way who he was and what he was all about. And sometimes, as we look back on it, we may have been a bit unfair. I don't think I was unfair in any respect when it comes to analyzing and critiquing his game based on what I saw. But if you're prognosticating about why you saw what you saw, and you're talking about things from that standpoint, and you're speaking to a multitude of sources, sometimes it's not just about validating the source's reliability or whatever the case may be. It's also touching on their agenda for giving the insight that they provide. And some of the insight that was provided by about LeBron James, by his opponents, by people in the media, by former contemporaries, by Hall of Famers, dare I say, was a bit excessively critical because they had a problem with the way he was celebrated. So now that he's winning, I think we owe it to him to be, you know, very, very much more fair in that regard as we critique him. And I think that's one of the things Gregg Popovich was talking about, because he's saying LeBron's, you know, really mastered pushing that aside. And I think we've done a better job of it as well, really noticing what he really brings to the table and appreciating it.
Okay, but really, bottom line, Popovich is saying it shouldn't matter what Stephen A. Smith says, or what I say, or what Kerry says. It just shouldn't matter. LeBron has learned to just stay right here within the most talented body in the world and just play basketball, have fun playing basketball, and tune out all the rest.